This is Learning Innovation, the teaching and learning podcast created by Lethbridge College's Center for Teaching, Learning, and Innovation. Here at CTLI, it's our job to keep education innovative and accessible, which leads to lots of interesting conversations and projects with students, educators, and other interesting people and professionals in our network. We hope you'll tune in, hit play, and get inspired as we navigate and capture the dynamic landscape of teaching, learning, and pedagogy. Welcome. This is Tech Talks segment, is episode number 14 of Learning Innovation, the teaching and learning podcast. I'm Tyler, and here's my co-host, Jude.
Hey.
And today we're going to discuss Hyflex learning. And so we have with us here Lexi Schaerz. I don't know if I pronounced that properly, and Trevor Gellrich, who both work in CTLI here at Lethbridge College. And I will let them explain their role because, well, I'm going to mess up if I try and do it. So Trevor, you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. So my role in CTLI is I'm a learning experience designer. I have been a learning experience designer for about 8 months now, so seasoned veteran. And my role here is, I guess we do a lot of different things, but generally I work in course development and also help out with program reviews. And within that course development, a lot of what we do is supporting instructors on their teaching strategies, assessments, and things of that nature. So yeah, that's what I do.
Great. Lexi?
Yeah, I'm Lexi Schaerz, and I'm also a learning experience designer. Trevor, I think you explained it pretty well. We do all of the program reviews, support instructors, course design, outcomes, all that type of stuff.
How did you both get into this Hyflex project? Like, did someone force you into it, or was it something that just the opportunity presented itself and you're like, I want to be a part of this project?
I think with COVID and everything, we had to be quick on our feet, and we're going to have students who are out and students who are in the classroom, and this opportunity presented itself, and we were able to get a few units together with the help of AV, and we started with a pilot of instructors and kind of went from there. It really evolved quickly.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask a quick icebreaker question that I'd like you guys to answer. First of all, who here has heard of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome? You all heard of that movie? Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes,
I
It's a little foggy, but
it's an old movie. But I know for a fact that Lexi, Trevor, and Ryan are all in floor hockey together. They play floor hockey once a week. And so I have a question for all three of you. Thunderdome is, the old mantra is two people enter, one man leaves. Or two people enter, one person leaves. But this is 3 people. So if we were to lock 3 of you in a room or in the gym, play floor hockey, 3 people enter, one person leaves, and I want you each to answer and give us reasons why, who you think would leave that gymnasium. And I want Ryan to start first.
Well, I mean, Trevor or I is leaving on a stretcher because Lexi is absolutely vicious with a hockey stick in her hands.
Ryan is our audio visual guy, by the way. He's the one that edits our audio and the video of this video as well. So thanks, Ryan. Trevor?
yeah, Lexi has really pointy elbows too, and I fear that. And I'm trying to remember, like, it's been a long time since I've seen Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome, and I know Tina Turner has a part in there.
Yeah.
And listening to Lexi sing is very similar to Tina Turner. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah. I really think that at the end of the day, maybe this is just the easy way out, but yeah, I'm sure it would be Lexi. Ryan and I would definitely be being tough. So
okay, so yeah. Lexi, I had 2 answers. And now I need the right answer. So you're up.
Personally, I think it would be Trevor, because I do have really sharp elbows, and Ryan makes a good point about leaving on a stretcher. Like, I leave everything out on the court, I guess we call it, floor. So, I mean, I think Ryan, he's a little bit more scrappy, and Trevor, he's tall, so I can really like get him behind the knees and that type of thing. So he goes down a little easier.
Okay, thanks. From all this conversation, I'm going to say that Lexi's the ultimate winner. Congratulations, Lexi.
Thank you.
And I was going to play floor hockey, but now maybe if you're playing, I might not. I don't know. So let's move on. I want to know, I've heard this Hyflex thing. I've worked with it, but I want you two to tell me, what is Hyflex? Who coined the phrase? Do they know how to spell? Because it's spelled Hyflex. And is Hyflex an acronym? Like, why is it spelled that way? And more importantly, what is Hyflex?
Well, the spelling and things like that, I'm not 100% sure. I'm guessing, in education, maybe that's a thing where people try to make things sound a lot cooler than they are, or try to smush words together all the time. In terms of looking back at like the origins of Hyflex, and again, I didn't just Google this. This was part of when we were creating a course for Hyflex for instructors at the college. The name Brian Beatty comes up a lot. He's a professor out of San Francisco State University. And it sounds like they were working towards trying to find a way to be flexible for their students. And this was back in about 2005, 2006. And so they came up with, through a lot of, I guess, trials and tribulations, so to speak, a method of trying to make sure that students had flexibility to attend class either face-to-face or having the opportunity to attend it remotely as well. And so I believe that's kind of where, if you want to have like an origin story or something like that, I would say it kind of goes back to Brian Beatty. But yeah, that's a little bit of the history.
So now I've heard a lot of people confuse Hyflex with blended delivery. Would you be able to explain the differences between, or even just a few differences between Hyflex and blended delivery? Because blended delivery was, I think, traditionally we would have said that 2006, 2007 timeline is where we would have called that blended delivery. But there seems to be, in the last 3 years, this transition from blended delivery to Hyflex.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I can go ahead with that. So I think the biggest difference is that it's flexible for students. That it's not, this is your online portion and this is your synchronous portion. You can change your mode of attendance weekly by topic according to your needs or preferences. If you're a parent and you can't attend at a certain time because your kids are going to bed, you can go and watch it asynchronously later in the day. I mean, you always have that choice no matter how you want to attend. So it's just a more flexible course structure. So they can attend synchronously in the classroom. They can participate asynchronously later. They could do both. They can switch it up, that type of thing. And another huge part of Hyflex is the synchronous and asynchronous students being able to communicate with each other in real time, and see each other just like you're in a classroom, having those conversations with your classmates.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to jump into, and one of the things that we've been talking to instructors about a lot is, like, when you are doing Hyflex, like if you want it to be true, like we're talking true blue Hyflex, is the intent has to be there to think about your lesson or your instruction, your lesson beforehand, that you are, whatever is happening in the class live for those, the face-to-face students or the synchronous online students, that the students who are watching it later are able to participate just the same as those people have done so live. And so it takes planning and forethought before the lesson, as opposed to just, doing a Zoom call while, talking to people live. Like it requires that planning and thought beforehand as well to be true Hyflex, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So I'm oversimplifying this, but tell me if I'm right or wrong. Could you say that Hyflex is more student centric, generally speaking, whereas blended learning was generally speaking more instructor centric, where the instructor in blended learning, the instructor was basically just doing some similar things, but it was more at their own pace, whereas Hyflex is more tailored towards the student being in power of how they see that delivery.
That's exactly right.
Is
Yeah,
that fair?
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Nailed it.
Well, I must have been listening then. I don't know. How has the rollout gone? What's the sense on campus? Are people enjoying it or not? Or just, is this one of those typical technologies that people are kind of resistant to at the start?
We've had to pivot so many times with this, different restrictions. We're allowed on campus, we're not allowed on campus, all of these sorts of things. And so I feel like we've kind of had to change the rollout so many times, but we've kind of started to, we have a room set up. So if instructors want to come and plug in and play around, and we come and help them. And then, because like Trevor said, it takes a little bit of forethought, and we have to figure it out before you get going with it. So the rollout it kind of comes in waves, and some instructors are using it. I know that people in trades are using it and it's going really well. Others are trying it out for the first time. And I think some are planning for winter semester using it as well. So we kind of have a little bit all over the place.
Yeah, there's definitely been, I think, a little bit of hesitancy in terms of from some of the instructors. And I think more so just because, again, they a lot potentially have come back from the summer, and then it's like, here, try this new thing potentially to help your students out with flexibility, or like Lexi is saying, when new restrictions maybe come in, that we have to be able to pivot. So it's definitely been a little bit of hesitancy, I think, but I've just found from my own experiences, once you kind of get the technology side set up and figured out, I think that will hopefully lead to instructors using this tool a lot more. The other thing that Lexi and I have been promoting whenever we're talking to instructors is to make sure that they are trying the technology before, like they're not just trying to plug it in 5 minutes before their first class of trying Hyflex, that they actually think about it, that they've tested the technology and have worked through it. So we're hoping that we'll see more instructors at least trying it out, even if it's for one lesson or two or whatever it happens to be, one lecture throughout the semester, just to try it out and see if it works for them. We're also going to be trying to track the usage as well, because we want to know who's using it, where the Hyflex units are being utilized, so we can potentially, just be better going forward.
Are you planning on doing a survey of the students to find out how they feel about it? We
are now.
Great idea.
I just thought of it.
No, that's we've talked about that as well, because Hyflex is, like you said earlier, all about the students, and it is good to know, how the students in the classroom as well, how does it change their learning, having their peers on a television screen? How is it affecting their learning? So it will be really interesting to hear from our students, I think.
I was doing a focus group yesterday, and there was, I think, 18 students or so in there. And I would say overwhelmingly, the majority of the students were really interested in the idea of Hyflex. And a couple of them actually had experience in like maybe limited fashion of a Hyflex classroom, but they were all for it. And again, and I know, God, that's a very small sample size, but at the end of the day, like that there is potential. So yeah, but absolutely, we need to get the student perspective on this as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm very interested in finding out the contrast between the instructor's experience and the student experience, because as instructors, they're kind of the producers of the content. And so there's a lot more setup. There's a lot more background work that the instructor is doing, but the student as a consumer, suffice to say, they're actually just able to click links, let the instructor know what they're doing and that kind of stuff. So they're on the student end, it's a lot more user-friendly as opposed to the instructor who's got to do a lot more background work. And I know that I think all of us here have worked with Hyflex and have set it up and done all that stuff. And we actually, many of us are support for Hyflex. And so it's not as though the instructors have no supports whatsoever. They have quite a bit of support, but I'm interested in seeing that contrast, to see that user experience, to see if the students are really high and the instructors are lower, something like that. So on to the next question. With Hyflex, is it the technology that's crucial, or is it the way that the technology is implemented that is crucial? And what I mean by that is it more important that there's a process? Because much of the technology that we're using in Hyflex isn't new technology. It's been around for quite a while. And so I just want to know which is more important in your guys' mind. Of course, this is very subjective, but
like you said, none of the technology is new, but I think we mentioned before, this isn't, we just come and we plug in and we go. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, sometimes Hyflex has taken me 45 minutes to set up on my computer because of the settings, and other times it's taken me 5 minutes. And I've set it up a whole bunch of times, and each time, now that I've done it lots of times, my computer settings are right. My PowerPoint, there's that little box that you have to uncheck, or, you now have 3 monitors that you're on, like finding your mouse and getting your display set up correct, which one you want your PowerPoint on, which one you want, your students on, that sort of thing. So the technology is important, but I think at the end of the day, once you need to practice it, use it, just with any kind of technology. But once you get that figured out, I think being mindful of our students, and like you said, it is a little bit more work for instructors, giving the students that learning experience that they all deserve, whether you're learning online, synchronously, asynchronously, you're doing it in the morning, you're doing it at night. I think just planning and, having our courses structured around this is something that takes time and a lot of thought. But at the end of the day, I think it's something that's really important. And if it's done right, it's something that is really, really great for students and instructors.
So I think Lexi was saying that technology is important, but implementation is probably more important.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah. There we go. Cool. I would agree. And again, when we were kind of talking about going back to what Hyflex truly is and that planning process around it. So how you implement it, and even thinking about things like where you're positioning your camera and how you're being able to, maybe if there are multiple cameras, flipping between them. It's about that student experience. And so again, that willingness to practice and implement it properly, I think would potentially trump the technology. But at the end of the day, if the technology doesn't work or is being fussy, that's going to obviously hinder your ability to have an effective class. So it's is it the egg and the chicken, or the cart and the horse, or something almost, right? So yeah.
Thanks very much, Jude. You haven't said much this podcast. I'd like to know what your take on all this is. Do you understand what we're talking about with Hyflex?
Yes, I do. My experience with it so far has just been using it for meetings. I haven't used it to instruct because all of my interactions with students are all very one-on-one so far. I do have some questions though. If instructors are struggling with getting the setup done, you guys give them, can offer support for helping them out with that, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, they can call AV or IT, they can come straight down to CTLI and we can kind of come and help them. But we've also created a course in Canvas that we are recommending if you want to try Hyflex, take a look at it. I mean, there's anything from setup to, how to actually design your course around it, all sorts of things. There's videos, there's pictures, things like that. So, I mean, somebody is always willing to help and available in CTLI, whether it's before you want to try Hyflex. I mean, that's what we recommend, because it does take a little bit of time to set everything up. But yeah, somebody's always here to help take some time and help you get set up. And
yeah, I think when earlier, Lexi, when you said that it's taking you 45 minutes before to set up, I'm pretty sure that that's probably caused a coronary on instructors listening to this podcast. It's like,
it's true.
They might even turn it right off at that point, but that's just the first time though, right? After that, the times come down.
Well, that's exactly it. But it just takes time. And, once you kind of are used to it and that type of thing, it comes a little bit more naturally. Your computer settings are all ready to go. But I mean, not every single time, sometimes technology is technology. And we have to know that, right? We can't just expect this to be a plug in and go and everything works out perfectly. So, I mean, we have to kind of weigh that as well.
In terms of figuring that out, I think there needs to be some motivation there for instructors. And I think we've talked a little bit about like why you would do that, but I think when I was listening to it, it felt a little bit like vague. Can we like really specifically, like how does Hyflex affect a learner? And one way that I can think about this is, for example, we have a lot of students who don't live in Lethbridge, the city. We have students who live in reserves near the city. We have students who live in rural communities near the city. And of course, this is Canada, we get snow. Sometimes the roads are like not safe to travel. And in that case, usually these students tend to just kind of miss classes on, the first day or two of snow because you don't want to endanger your life to get to class. It's not worth it generally. But this, I think with Hyflex, then there's that option for them to be like, oh, that day, like I can't physically come to the campus that day. So I can kind of tune into the Zoom aspect of it, still attend my lessons and that sort of thing. So that's an example that I can think of that would really like positively affect our students, is that they would miss class less, because sometimes students have very good reasons for missing class.
Yeah, I mean, life happens. I think back to what I said at the start, it's all about being flexible and, joining. I mean, it really does make education accessible for you, no matter what your situation is, and it can change day to day, but you're still getting the same experiences as students in the class. And I mean, ideally.
And again, I think this obviously for a lot of institutions has been spurred on because of COVID. And just to your point, Jude, right? Like if I'm quarantining for whatever the rules are now, 10 or 14 or 300 days or whatever it is, I can still attend my classes. Now I'm doing that via Zoom, or I'm doing that as the asynchronous learner watching the video later. But again, that instructor is able to provide me still with that learning experience. So yeah, I think you nailed it though. Like that's the other example we use, right? Is being in Canada and having weather that isn't always cooperative, right?
The weather just tries to kill you every now and again.
Yeah. It's just normal, right? But anyways, no, that's definitely another example of where it could be potentially used, but that would be a bit of a tighter time frame potentially for instructors. So they would have to be probably ready to roll with a weather system coming in. So.
Can I answer my own question again? Because I thought of another good reason to implement Hyflex. And the reason I'm thinking of is that a lot of students, if you have a chronic health problem, for example, I have chronic health problems. I'm managing them a lot better than I was in my early 20s. But for example, if you have like a sleep disorder, even if you have depression, if you have like a chronic pain disorder, these sorts of things, you can't always guarantee that you're going to feel great every day. And sometimes you feel awful for like days on end. But somebody like me, like I was always very, very invested in my education. And I really wish that I'd had that option, because there were a lot of times that I missed class, missed assignments, when it was just something stupid, like I just didn't sleep that night. So I just couldn't like attend class because it wouldn't have been productive. Or there were times when I attended class anyway, and it really like hurt my health more. And it would have been way better for me to have just like stayed home that day. So I think this Hyflex, even if you're not specifically thinking like, oh, I have a student who has X, Y, and Z, so I'm accommodating for that. I think Hyflex sort of automatically accommodates for a lot of conditions that our students might have that would make it difficult for them to follow sort of a more like a less flexible course. I'm saying nods. Thank you for agreeing with me.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's, you get the sniffles, you want to stay home, and you have options, right? Even if you feel great and you start getting a runny nose, well, just stay home, watch it online, participate live. And it's a great option for that.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, Jude, is, just the general well-being of our students is something that's really important to all of us. And this makes that so much easier. It doesn't matter what, like you said, if the student has X, Y, or Z, and I'm accommodating for this. I think we all have days, and sometimes you might just not be feeling well, or something like that, and this helps with that. If it's one thing off the student's plate that day, that they can check it out later, or maybe they really need to be around people and they can come to class. I think it's a great option.
That's great. So I'm just to wrap up, I'm going to ask a question, and I just want you to give a quick answer. What's your worst moment in implementing Hyflex? Starting with Trevor this time. So he can't jump in because he obviously plays a lot of basketball because he jumps a lot.
Thanks. You know what? I have yet to have like a super, I don't know, worst moment, but I know just for Lexi and I were setting up, we were meeting with a bunch of instructors. This is about 2 weeks ago, and we went early because we wanted to make sure that everything was working. And after about 40 minutes, not even 30 minutes, we called Ryan desperately being like, come help us, please, please. And like you're saying with the coronary thing, like, the sweat was starting to like being like, oh man, this is going to be awful if we can't get this to work. But thankfully, again, we went early. We had the support from Ryan to come and help set things up, and it worked out. So it was a lesson learned, and we were practicing what we preached. But that was definitely, I would say, the worst moment that I've had with any experiences so far. So
a more positive spin is to say lesson learned.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. Lexi?
I don't think I've had a terrible experience. I mean, I know we have Ryan, so I wasn't sweating like Trevor. I was like, what, I'll just call Ryan. He can come and save the day. But I think, so I was teaching a course last week via Hyflex, and my computer was dying, but I already had so many things plugged in that there was no room to plug my computer in. So I didn't want to lose my students on the TV screen. So I had to quickly grab another dongle and do some plugging in. But when I unplugged, everything went black. My laptop went black, the TV went black. And I was like, oh no, like I'm never going to get them back. We're halfway through the lesson. In the end, it all worked out and it was fine. But I did have that moment of like, so, I mean, like I said, you just never know what's going to happen, even if things are going perfect. So that was kind of my, when your screen goes black and you're using 3 screens and 2 of them are black, it's kind of like, ooh, this is not good. But
well, it's important for us to have those experiences too, right? Because
it is.
The instructors are having these experiences, so it gives us a little bit more empathy.
That's right.
And being bad at something the first time is often the first step to being kind of good at it.
That's right.
So.
Okay. Thank you very much for being on the show. And if someone, the one place, if there is one takeaway from all of this, an instructor is having an experience like that, what's the one thing that you would tell them? The one takeaway? Call Ryan, right?
Exactly.
So call AV. If you're having trouble with Hyflex, call AV. AV, what's the number at AV there? Ryan, can you?
Well, I'm not sure I should give it out. It's well specific to Lethbridge College. We're 3353, but I think just to answer your question in general is not to sound too preachy, but I think everybody needs to have a little bit of grace for each other. So the instructor needs to have grace for the student who can't make it or feels that they can't make it to campus. And the students need to have a lot of grace for the instructor who's walking into a classroom for the first time in 18 months. There's all this new technology. They're trying to teach one in person and one online. So like I said, I think everybody just needs a bit of room for grace.
Agreed. Thanks for that, Ryan. So usually we end the podcast with asking the guests, what have you loved learning lately? But on this podcast, because I'm the host and not Donna, I'm going to ask Jude what he's loved learning lately. So Jude, what have you loved learning lately?
Okay, I had to think a lot because I love learning a lot. But in particular, lately, I have really enjoyed learning about Indigenous perspectives. And for me, it's very personally motivated because I'm starting to learn more and more that, if we took Indigenous perspectives and Indigenous knowledge a little bit more seriously, I think things like homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, ableism, like they actually wouldn't be as prevalent as they are. There's things like there's evidence that Indigenous peoples were practicing intellectual property centuries before Europeans were. There's evidence that some nations knew about autism thousands of years ago and actually have really good accommodation methods for it, stuff like that. And I'm just scratching the surface. So in particular, I've read 2 books lately that I'd really recommend. One of them is called Elements of Indigenous Style by Gregory Younging by Brush Education. It's Indigenous authored, collaboratively authored, and it's basically guidelines for how to research, write about, and cite Indigenous knowledge. Because Western academics kind of has its notion of academic integrity and how you use information and knowledge ethically and respectfully. But generally speaking, Indigenous nations have different protocols for how they sort of pass on their knowledge, and it's crucial to the actual knowledge itself. So you can't necessarily convert Indigenous knowledge to sort of a Western platform and have it just be ethical and work. Sometimes you have to take extra steps and talk to extra people and make sure that it's happening in a way that's accurate and ethical. The other book that I'd recommend is called Storying Violence by Dallas Hunt and Gina Star Blanket. I'm not from the prairies, I'm from Halifax. And when I first moved here, if I'm being honest, the sort of racial dynamics here really surprised me and I did not understand them. And it genuinely, it is until I read this book that I finally understood like the history of like when people moved here and how they moved here and that sort of thing and how that affects the racial dynamics here. And now I feel like I understand it a lot better. And both of those books are actually relatively easy reads, especially the Elements of Indigenous Style. It's basically like a publication manual and those are notoriously dry. This was actually interesting to read. So I'd recommend it in general.
Thanks, Jude. Got the double thumbs up, so we're good. Yeah, thanks everybody for showing up. Thanks, Trevor, Lexi, Ryan. I'm sorry I brought you into this podcast, but it was great. I'm glad I did. And you had great points and great perspective. And thanks, Jude. This episode featured Tyler and Jude Bialik as co-hosts and co-producers, and Trevor Gellrich and Lexi Schaerz as guests. Ryan Robinson was our sound technician and editor. Thank you also to Daryl Benedict, Joel Gaudry, Jordana Gagnon, Kelsey Jansen, and Donna McLaughlin for their ongoing support and expertise. Our podcast is funded by Lethbridge College's Center for Teaching, Learning, and Innovation and recorded predominantly on the traditional lands of the Blackfoot Confederacy. For more information and inspiration, check out www.learninginnovation.ca. If you like what you hear, please rate, review, and follow us on your chosen platform. Thanks for listening and take care.
Action.
Oh, welcome to the big show.
Yeah, see, you're good.
so I know 4 languages,
Nice.
but I speak one fluently and the other 3 I don't understand and can't speak. So I don't
So
know.
you speak one
So you
language.
speak one language.
Sorry, you want me to say that or Tyler?
I'm talking to Tyler.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I'm making eye contact with his thumbnail on the screen, but I realize now that that's. I love everything Ryan says and does. Oh my word. Okay.
This should be getting recorded. We'll just post this and we're done. Make like a tree and leave.
Were we like, was that good?